Welcome to Seven Skills for the Future podcast. My name is Emma Sue Prince, and this podcast is based on the internationally selling book by the same name. This book focuses on 7 important skills. They are adaptability, critical thinking, empathy, integrity, being proactive, being optimistic, and being resilient. And this podcast is all about how you can bring these skills into your everyday life so that you are living a life full of happiness, full of purpose, great relationships, doing work that you love, and just really getting the most out of life. Welcome to Seven Skills for the Future podcast. My name is Emma Sue Prince, and I'm here with James, my producer.
Hi, Emma Sue, and hello, everyone. So this is a special episode we've decided to record between series. Emma Sue, can you tell everyone why we've decided to do this?
Well, I feel it's really important right now to help people see how they can use these 7 skills to better understand and navigate their way through all this change that we're going through right now. So it really is unprecedented change, and it's very, very turbulent. And it's also a situation that unites us.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, everything seems to be kind of up in the air, in flux at the moment as we're recording this. And it seems like it's going to be that way for a little while. So maybe to begin, Emma Sue, maybe you can give us an idea of how is this affecting you?
Well, a lot of things have changed very, very quickly, and I'm having to rethink a lot of the way that we work because so much of our work is face-to-face. So immediately there's been lots of cancellations, lots of changes with my family and my husband and home working, and, lots and lots of things happening very, very quickly, one after the other, So in a very short space of time, it feels like my whole world has been turned upside down.
I can imagine, because of course you're there in the UK. I live in Brazil, in case anyone doesn't realise that we're not sitting in the same room. And so we're a few weeks behind where you are there in the UK. So it hasn't really kicked in here yet. There's been a few things, but we'll see. Come back to me in a month or so, and I think people will start to realise just how serious this is. But so everything, as we said, everything seems to be up in the air. No one really knows what's going on. And of course, one of the problems with this is the fact that, it leads people feeling this great deal of uncertainty, and it can often leave people feeling quite anxious about many aspects of their life. So of course, we're thinking about the 7 skills. Emma Sue, what are your thoughts about how we can use the 7 skills at this time?
Well, when we're faced with these kinds of extremes, the only way, and I mean the only way, is to really dig deep and tap into these 7 skills. And by doing so, it's not that we take the issue away, we don't take the uncertainty away, but we can't, but we can find it within ourselves to rally and to get stronger. And I think the most important of all, we can find it within ourselves to navigate our way through. So that's how these skills are going to help us. And I think I'd like to go through the skills one by one, and talk about each one, and how it can help. Okay.
All right. So where should we begin?
Well, we'll begin with adaptability, I think, because,
it makes sense.
It is the first chapter in the book, but it's, we are being called upon to be hugely adaptable right now. And, I would like to say that we do have infinite capacity to be adaptable. It is hardwired into us, but we know that when we're faced with change, what we do is we resist it. Our default response to change, if you like, is to actually resist it. So, but we need to be adaptable. We have to figure out how to roll. Like Dr. Max McEwen said a few episodes ago, how am I going to roll today? And actually, I highly recommend dipping into that episode if you want to get a much more kind of in-depth look at adaptability skills. But it's being able to be comfortable with change, and that's really, really hard. So I think with adaptability, what I always come back to, and the best way to build it, is still going to be returning to the comfort zone and to the huge importance of getting ourselves into the stretch zone. Now, what's happening with this COVID-19 situation is that it will have put many people automatically into panic zone, and in the worst possible way, because they've been put into panic zone in a drip sort of way as the daily news updates change, and this slow sort of horrible recognition that things are changing completely,
Yeah.
So panic zone is your fight or flight response, so fight is panic buying and stockpiling behavior, quite extreme sort of survival instincts kicking in.
Yeah.
And flight is denial, but it can also be manifest. So it can be manifest by being in denial, but it can also be manifest by spending time going down the rabbit hole of social media and, what are other people saying? What are other people writing? What's the news? Kind of being a victim.
Yeah.
So that this is not a good place to be. It is seriously not a good place to be. So, and I would say that none of us is in our comfort zone right now, really not in our comfort
Definitely.
zone. So
Yeah.
we need to get into stretch, and stretch is where we feel uncomfortable, we feel anxious, but it's also where we learn and grow. So we have to work out how are we going to get ourselves into stretch? What's going to help us? Is it going to be getting really good information? Is it going to be trying to feel, relax into that feeling uncomfortable as much as we possibly can? What are the things that are going to help us move into that stretch and learning zone? And that's going to help a lot.
Great. Okay. So what about the next skill? Which one do you want to speak about now?
So, all of these skills overlap, so it's actually quite hard to separate them
Sure.
because, the next skill will link into being adaptable as well.
Mm-hmm.
So if we look at critical thinking, there are lots of things here,
Yeah.
we need to be thinking about where we're getting our information from. And is that information coming from a good source? Because the difficulty at the moment is that we can get so much information, but a lot of it isn't very good. And it's about really, where am I consuming data? How am I consuming it? Am I doing this in a healthy way? So, in our household, we very quickly got into the habit of, checking the news first thing. I never do that. I never look at news first thing, but we got into the habit of doing that in the mornings, in the evenings. And I think because of the way news comes to us, we just get overloaded with it. So thinking about how we consume the news, where are we getting our information from, understanding better how our brains work, the assumptions we make, the stages we might go through with something like this. So, and as you say, Brazil is behind the UK, and I think the UK has gone through sort of shock and denial and, disbelief. And, I think we're sort of now kind of realizing what's actually happening. And where you want to get to, where you want to be getting to is an acceptance of our new reality that in itself keeps changing. So critical thinking comes into play here. And I think, scientists and health professionals right now, politicians, they're all having to make decisions without perfect information, right? Things are so ambiguous and they've got to do it very quickly. So it's being able to make decisions quickly yourself about your family, about your business, about your work. And it's also about, identifying opportunities going forward as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And of course, about being able to, like you said, interact with the information that's coming to you and figuring out what you need to know and what you don't need to focus on. Yesterday I had 2 people asking me if they thought that the virus was deliberately made by the Chinese. And then when you hear that, you think, well, of course it's nonsense, but but then you think, well, is this what we need to be doing right now? Is this the kind of conversation we should be having? Is this
Yes.
healthy for us? This is not what we
Yeah.
need to be focusing on, right?
That's right.
Is this kind of
Yeah.
nonsense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think you do have to protect yourself from some of that, because a lot of stuff is coming out of the woodwork around, I mean, you're going to have, honestly, you are going to have the nutters that are like, this was meant to be, and this is the world, Armageddon, and you're going to have all that rubbish going on. It is a bit like I feel like we're living in a movie right now.
Yeah. 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 Okay. So, what's the next element of the 7 skills you want to focus on?
So let's look at empathy.
Mm-hmm.
Empathy is an interesting one, because we are being called on to socially distance ourselves when, as human beings, we crave connection.
Yeah.
So this is a really, really big one, and is really going to be hard for us, and it means that we're going to have to try and find connection in different ways. So there's a great opportunity here, because we are all in this together, and there is an opportunity to come together and to support each other and help each other. And I do think that that's going to happen more and more. I think we're going to see that more and more. And I think it's also about, looking around you. What can you do to help your community? We're setting up an initiative in our village at the moment where we are working out, a network of support. How are we going to help some of the more vulnerable members in our community? How are we going to, I'm going to be volunteering to do deliveries and, things that actually are practical. And also by doing things like that, you're helping yourself, because you're doing something practical, and you're gonna feel better. You're going to feel better. But it's also about kindness and helping other people.
Yeah.
Because we're in this together.
Yeah, and then there's the emotional support aspect as well, of course, isn't there? But by doing those things, you're also having to engage with people, like speak to people that maybe you wouldn't normally speak to, and so hopefully those ties will leave some benefits behind in the future, where people will be more connected within their communities. Let's hope that's one benefit that comes from it.
Of course, we hope that there will be good things that come out of this as well, and there will be. I think one of the things that's quite hard for us to do, and it kind of links in with optimism here, but one thing that's quite difficult for us to do when we're going through something so monumental as this, is to lose sight of the fact that it is temporary.
Yeah.
I know we don't know how long it's going to be going on for, but it is still temporary, Mm-hmm. It's a hallmark of optimism to be able to recognize that. And it's hard for us to do it because we tend to think, oh my gosh, life has changed beyond all recognition. It's happened really quickly. The world is coming to an end as we know it.
Yeah.
Which is extreme sort of thinking, thinking in extremes. And so just got to be kind of mindful of that. But also coming back to empathy again, it's also about self-care. It's about doing everything you can to boost your immune system right now. So, maybe that will result in people eating more healthily, and just doing what they can to be physically strong, because we need to be physically strong as well.
Okay, so should we move on to integrity now?
Yeah, I think integrity is an interesting one, because integrity is all about our values and what's important to us. And I think we're going to have time on our hands to actually really think about this a bit more, and how can the things that we value, how can we make sure those things are still present in our lives over the coming months if we have limited mobility, for example, or if we can't do some of the things that we used to do. How do we make those things align with what we actually value? And, values are very personal, and they can be so many different things. I mean, we've got a great exercise on the website, actually, which can help you identify what your values are. But the most important thing about values is how they're manifested in your life. So, how is that value? What is that value looking like in your day-to-day life? So if one of your values is to be physically strong, for example. That can be a value. How are you going to continue to
Yeah.
create that in your life? How are you going to keep exercising? If one of your values is family and spending time with your family, okay, what are you going to do to make the time that you now have meaningful? What kind of structure are you going to create for yourself in your day? And integrity is also about how do we act with integrity to people that we're responsible for. So if we're an employer, how do we make sure the people who work for us are looked after? In the UK, London has emptied. Everybody is now having to work from home. And working from home is, it's one thing if it's one day a week, or if you're a freelancer and you already work from home. It's a completely different ballgame when you have an organization where people normally come into an office every single day, and now they're all working from home. So as an employer, how do you treat those employees who are now working from home? How are you going to make sure that they are keeping upbeat, keeping productive? How's their well-being? All of those different kinds of things. And we're going to see a lot of changes in the workplace as well.
Okay, so what's the next skill?
Well, the next one is optimism, and it links. Optimism, being proactive, and resilience are all closely linked together.
Absolutely, yeah.
Very, very strongly linked, of all seven. So optimism is, it's interesting because I think that, when some people believe optimism is about positive thinking, it's going to be okay. Let's put on a happy face.
Yeah.
That's not what optimism is. It isn't positive thinking. It's not affirmations. It's not any of this stuff that you often kind of read about in self-help books.
And it's not just sort of blind optimism in the face of the evidence or anything like this, is it? It's not like sort of a forced optimism, no matter what is happening.
No, it's not. It is all about positive action. It really is about the actions that you take. So therefore, when we talk about being proactive, that's going to boost optimism skills. We talk about being resilient, that's going to boost optimism skills. And, I still will come back to things that are very simple. So the importance of gratitude. If you're not keeping a gratitude journal, start doing it, because it will help you. It'll help you first thing in the morning. You just reflect on what you're grateful for. And same thing at the end of the day. Look back at the day and find the good things that happened that day, because this is really well researched, and even people who have been living in extreme crisis situations, when they got them to actually reflect back on the day and identify something positive, a positive experience, it's helped them cope with long-term trauma. So that's why I really advocate this for the times we're going through now, because it's a very simple thing to do, but it reaps a lot of benefits in terms of, just as I said at the beginning of this episode, navigating our way through. Let's try and do little things every day that just help us, So that kind of practice is really important, but also important to remember that optimism is being able to reframe things. It's being able to accurately assess a situation and recognize that it's temporary. And it's not personal, it's not, it's not. So these sort of nutters, as I'll call them, who sort of think that maybe this is some kind of way of some sort of retribution for the world or the planet, or, because we've not been treating the planet well, forget that. That's not, that's just all or nothing ridiculous thinking, it really, really is.
Yeah.
So optimism is very realistic, actually, very pragmatic, actually,
Yeah, stoical, isn't it, in a way, I suppose you could say.
It is in a way, and it's an interesting thing because it's, as I say, so many people think of optimism as somehow, just remaining upbeat all the time. You're not going to, you are going to go through downward spirals within this situation. We know we are on a bit of a roller coaster right now. We really are. But I think with optimism, it's the simple things that actually help you. And that leads quite nicely into being proactive because, as I say, these are linked. And being proactive is, I would probably say that actually of all the skills, this one is probably the most important when it comes to the situation we're in right now, because when we don't feel in control, which we probably don't right now,
Yeah.
we tend to, we will place all of our energy consistently and constantly into the things we can't control. So that will manifest itself in watching the news all the time, talking to people all the time about this situation.
Yeah.
So you can actually not do that if you want to. So to recognize that when you're doing that, it's not that you shouldn't talk to people about it. Of course you should. Not that you shouldn't listen to the news. Of course you should. But when you start putting your energy and your thoughts and your focus into that, you're not actually achieving anything. You're not actually doing anything.
Yeah.
So it and it's very easy for us to do that. It's very easy. It's very, very easy for us to do that. And you will notice that happening all around you. People will put their energy into what they can't control. So what we need to do is bring our energy back into the locus of control, which is us, so what we choose to think, how we choose to behave, working stuff out, so that can be anything from talking earlier about how we, when do we decide to watch the news, for example. You're not going to be, there's not going to be any shortage of news items coming your way, so you can decide when you want to actually be exposed to that. You can get together with people or talk to people and talk about something else. You don't have to talk about the situation all the time. So you can, be brave. But most importantly, it's working out, where do you go from here? Where do you go from here? And knowing that actually it's quite uncertain, because we don't know what lies ahead. And we all want to be told, we want to be told what's happening. We want to be told, you're going to be locked down for 30 days. Okay, that might be the case, but it could be longer.
Yeah.
We don't like this open-ended uncertainty. This is actually very hard to deal with. I have found it extremely hard not to have this just being told what to do, So you've got to kind of think, okay, you might even have to come down to every day, what's the most proactive thing I can do each day,
Yeah.
So I have, for example, decided that every day I will put something out there which is positive, whether it's, talking about one of these skills or just helping somebody, or, I'll make sure that something, every day put something out there that's positive. I've had to work out very fast how I'm going to reconfigure my business.
Yeah.
And that's being proactive, So I did go down. I went right down because it felt like the whole thing was just being taken away from underneath me.
Yeah.
But what's great about being proactive is the minute you put your emphasis back into what you can control, your thoughts, your behavior, where you go from here, you feel better. So that's the link with optimism. You actually feel better, and it's an immediate thing. It's not just something that's going to happen tomorrow. The minute you put your energy back into your locus of control, you will feel better. And that's what I did. So I had to, think fast and think, okay, how can I reconfigure what I'm doing to turn it into something that people can access and still access? And we can't do it anymore the way that we have been doing it, but that's okay. We're gonna do it a different way. So I think being proactive is really important, because as we go through all of this, lots of industries, lots of the ways we work are going to be disrupted.
Yeah.
They're going to be turned on their heads. And that just, if we can relax into that and think, okay, that just means I've got to find a different way.
Okay, so let's finish looking at the skills with resilience.
So resilience is all about getting a lot stronger and a lot more robust and getting up fast, so we need to get bouncier and we need to get up quickly. I mean, this kind of rolls back very neatly back into adaptability again, because it's about, how do we get up? But yeah, so resilience is about really boosting yourself as much as you can. And that's going to come from your network around you. So that's going to become really important for people, is who they've got around them and building up that network of support. So again, in the workplace, we still need to keep those ties between colleagues and between people really strong in the absence of not being able to see each other, so that's a big part of being resilient, is who do you have around you, how are you going to keep that support network strong, how are you going to keep yourself strong, and some of those things again are going to be simple things that we do. So if we are going to be at home more, we need to create a structure for our day. We need to figure out how we're going to keep our brains engaged in what we're doing, keep ourselves productive, keep ourselves active, whether, hopefully we can still go out for walks and things, but, keeping yourself strong physically is also a big part of being resilient, because, when I think about resilience right now, the thing I think about most is my immune system, right? How do I get myself strong physically, and how do I make sure that I am resilient to this virus when it comes, if it comes, So resilience is on many different levels. It's physical, it's emotional, it's your mental health, your mental health and
absolutely.
your well-being, really helping yourself to be less anxious, because you're going to feel anxious, because that's also part of being in your stretch zone. But it's about making sure you've got those boosts around you that really, really help you. And those can be little things. Those can be treats. Those can be in the food you eat. Those can be in the conversations that you have. How are you going to be resourceful? I've had to, with my husband, I was planning a surprise birthday party for him. And I've now had to sort of bounce back from the, disappointment of not being able to run it, and think, okay, how can I recreate this and be resourceful? So we're going to have a virtual birthday party, because it's still important to have it, it's still important to keep going, because that's another part of being resilient, is to keep going. And keeping going doesn't mean, we're going to keep going no matter what. It's about finding another way, perseverance.
Okay, Masu, well, thanks for that advice. I think that this episode will hopefully be really helpful for people. Is there anything left that you want to say to our listeners?
Well, I can think of lots of things to say, actually. I think what I want to say really is that we do have these skills. We really, really do. And it's about really taking time each day to think about how you can show that kindness. How can you be proactive? How are you going to navigate your way through the day, through these changes? How are you going to talk about this with other people? What connections are you going to make? So really bringing actions back to yourself. We are going to get through this. We as human beings are amazing. And we do. What I know 100% is that we have these skills, and perhaps now we're just being called upon more than ever to really dig deep and find them and live them every day.
So thanks a lot, Masu, for all the suggestions and advice you've given us today in today's episode. I'm sure it's going to be really useful for our listeners. I think that brings us to the end of today's episode.
Yes, it does. So thanks for listening, and look forward to seeing you in season 6.
Thank you for listening to the 7 Skills for the Future podcast. There are all sorts of things you can do to boost each of the 7 skills. If you want more ideas, you can buy the book, 7 Skills for the Future. You can also go online to our website, Unimentor, and join as a member, and you'll be able to access more resources, ideas, and free downloads. If you have a question you want to ask on these podcasts, get in touch through Instagram at 7 Skills for the Future, or on Twitter and Facebook at Unimentor. And don't forget to subscribe to this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or your podcast player of choice.